Chinese President Xi Jinping and Taiwan's main opposition leader Cheng Li-wun affirming the need to maintain peace across the Taiwan Strait. The pair holding talks in a rare meeting in Beijing. Cheng Li-wun in China on a 6-day visit for what she calls a peace mission at a time when Beijing is ramping up pressure on the self-ruled island that it claims as its own. Xi Jinping saying people on both sides are part of one family that want peace and development. But he also struck a firm tone, warning that China will, quote, absolutely not tolerate any moves towards Taiwan independence, which he has called a main threat to stability in the region. Cheng Li-wun also echoing those sentiments, urging Beijing and Taipei to work together to, quote, avoid war. CNA correspondent Krystal Chia has more on the outcomes of that meeting.
The rare meeting started with a long handshake and then saw both sides stress their desire for cross-strait peace. President Xi said that despite the international landscape, the two parties are meeting to safeguard their shared homeland. He also said that China was willing on a common political foundation to work with various parties, including the KMT.
今天的世界并不太平，和平弥足珍贵。 两岸同胞都是中国人，一家人，要和平，要发展，要交流，要合作，这是共同心声。两党领导人今天见面，就是为了维护我们共同家园的和平安宁。
So throughout Zheng's trip so far, when she made remarks at various stops, she kept repeating the idea of peace, saying that her visit will help to bring peace as a gift to the people in Taiwan, and that the two sides do not need military confrontation. Now, following the meeting with President Xi, the KMT held a press conference that lasted about an hour, and here's what she has to say.
我们当然要与时俱进的，透过不同的语言。 或者是与当下契合的表述的方式，让每一代的年轻人都了解，在这个阶段我们面临的是一个什么样的挑战，而如何透过9·2共识跟反对台独来避免战争、避免悲剧，来携手缔造和平，在和平的基础上谋取人民最大的福祉。
So Zheng is the KMT's first sitting leader to visit the mainland in about a decade. The question about whether she was going to have this meeting was one that has dominated the entire visit ever since she landed on Tuesday. And it wasn't really confirmed until yesterday that she was going to have this meeting.
Of course, Cheng Li-wun did, in fact, finally get her meeting with Xi Jinping. People see this invitation to come in the first instance as an affirmation of a relationship decades in the making. It was ties between the Kuomintang and the Chinese Communist Party, a milestone back in 2005. A meeting in Beijing between then KMT chair Lian Zhan and Chinese President Hu Jintao, their handshake marking a shift from decades of hostility to renewed engagement. It was the first such meeting since 1945, when Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong held talks before the Chinese Civil War eventually ruptured ties between these two long-time rivals, but a reset 6 decades later. At those talks in 2005, Lian Zhan and Hu Jintao agreed on a 5-point consensus, a framework to improve cross-strait ties. It included support for the so-called 1992 consensus, reflecting a shared understanding of the One China principle. Agreement as well to promote stable relations, including steps to reduce the risk of military conflict. And they backed closer economic cooperation, including direct transport links and trade. They also discussed Taiwan taking part in international organizations and agreed to establish regular communication, paving the way for the KMT-CPC Forum, an exchange platform that is held almost every year, bringing members from both parties together to discuss economic and diplomatic issues. It also led to a landmark agreement in 2010, which reduced barriers to trade across the strait. Another breakthrough came in November 2015 at the Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore. A meeting between then Taiwan President and KMT member Ma Ying-jeou and President Xi Jinping, at which Ma Ying-jeou emphasized keeping the status quo, and Xi Jinping that both sides were part of one family. Just months later, a major shift in Taiwan's political landscape. The independence-leaning Democratic Progressive Party, led by Tsai Ing-wen, won a decisive election victory, triggering significant deterioration in cross-strait ties. Nevertheless, then KMT chair Hong Xiuzhu and President Xi Jinping met later that year, Ms. Hong reiterating support for the One China framework, while acknowledging that both sides had differing interpretations. Official exchanges between the KMT and China have since slowed, and party forums have come to a halt. With cross-strait relations taking a turn for the worse, China has refused to speak to the DPP, labeling current Taiwanese President William Lai a dangerous separatist. But communications have continued with the KMT, those ties cemented by a handshake 2 decades ago. Testament to the endurance of diplomacy and dialogue.